They divorced quietly. Then, while police were still investigating a secret shipping fraud, Noah vanished from his office. 3 days later, Elise disappeared on her way to a police interview. No bodies. No arrests. Just a port, a missing container, and evidence someone powerful didn't want seen. Who made them disappear, and why were they taken one by one? If you believe the law protects everyone, watch this. A divorced couple vanish during an active investigation. No suspects. No arrests. No bodies. Stay till the end, because the real question isn't what happened to them. It's who was powerful enough to erase them. On April 3rd, the divorce between Noah Grant and Elise Carter became final. No courtroom drama. No custody battle. No public fight. After 7 quiet years of marriage, they signed the last document, stood up from opposite sides of the table, and walked out of the courthouse separately. According to their lawyers, they had not spoken directly in months. But the investigation would later discover something the paperwork never showed. For the next 4 weeks, Noah and Elise continued to move through the same small city as if nothing had truly ended. Noah kept his job at a private logistics company near the harbor. He clocked in on time, answered emails, and told his supervisor he was finally free to start over. Elise returned to her apartment across town and quietly resumed freelance work as a digital illustrator. Friends described the separation as clean. Too clean. What no one knew then was that both of them were being questioned in the same unresolved case, a financial fraud inquiry involving missing shipment records and a shell account that had briefly carried both their names. The detectives believed the divorce might be strategic. On May 6th, while investigators were still tracing transactions and requesting bank warrants, Noah Grant failed to show up for work. 3 days later, Elise Carter missed a scheduled interview with police. Neither of them has been seen since. The first disappearance was treated as a coincidence. Noah Grant was last confirmed at 7:58 a.m., entering his office building near the harbor. His access badge registered. The lobby camera captured him holding a paper cup of coffee and checking his phone. He never badged out. By noon, his supervisor called his personal number. It went straight to voicemail. His emergency contact, his younger sister, said Noah had not mentioned any plans to travel or take time off. When police entered his small rented apartment that evening, nothing looked disturbed. His wallet was on the kitchen counter. His passport was still inside a drawer. His laptop was open on the dining table. The only thing missing was his phone. Investigators quietly flagged Noah as a person of interest in the fraud inquiry. Not a suspect. Not a witness. A risk. Then something uncomfortable surfaced. 2 days before he vanished, Noah had requested a copy of his finalized divorce decree from the courthouse, again. The clerk remembered him because he asked one question before leaving. How long does it take before records stop being easy to trace? 3 days after Noah disappeared, while detectives were preparing a formal missing person notice, Elise Carter sent a short email to her lawyer. Just one line. If Noah talks, everything collapses. It was the last message she ever sent. Elise Carter disappeared in a way that felt deliberate. Unlike Noah, she left no empty apartment behind. On May 9th, Elise was seen on the security camera of her apartment building at 10:14 a.m., stepping into the elevator with a single shoulder bag. She wore a black hoodie, sunglasses, and no visible jewelry. The doorman later told police she smiled and said she was finally done with lawyers. At 11:30 a.m., she was scheduled for a formal interview with investigators. She never arrived. Her phone rang twice during the drive to the police station, according to cell records. Both calls came from an unregistered number. Both lasted less than 10 seconds. After the second call, her phone powered off. When officers entered her apartment that afternoon, they found something Noah's place never had. Evidence of preparation. Her computer had been wiped the night before. A locked storage box in her bedroom closet was empty. Even her framed sketches, personal pieces she had refused to sell for years, were gone. But one detail didn't fit the idea of a clean escape. On her kitchen table sat an envelope addressed to her lawyer. Inside was a printed bank statement from the same shell account investigators were tracing. At the bottom, Elise had written one sentence in red ink. "He disappeared before I could stop him." The case was no longer about one missing ex-husband. It was now two people, vanished within the same investigation. And only one of them had clearly planned it. The timeline became the only thing detectives could still control. Noah vanished on May 6th. Elise vanished on May 9th. But the investigation did not start with their disappearances. It started 4 weeks earlier, quietly. On April 11th, a compliance officer at a shipping brokerage flagged a series of altered cargo entries. Containers were marked as cleared, but no physical inspections were logged. The digital trail pointed back to Noah's department. The financial routing of the missing cargo fees led to a temporary holding account. The same shell account. When detectives pulled historical access data, Elise's name appeared once, only once, on the account registration records. As a beneficiary. She had not withdrawn money. But she had authorized a change. On April 18th, someone using Elise's credentials updated the emergency recovery contact to a private encrypted email. An address investigators could not legally trace without foreign cooperation. When questioned by police a week later, Elise had appeared confused. Cooperative. Almost relieved. She told them Noah handled everything. But phone metadata painted a different story. During the month after their divorce, Noah and Elise exchanged 17 short calls. None lasted more than 20 seconds. No messages. No location sharing. No visible coordination. Just brief connections. Enough to warn. Enough to threaten. Enough to confirm that despite the legal separation, the risk still linked them together. The divorce had ended their marriage. The investigation had quietly reunited them. And now, with both of them gone, detectives had to consider the possibility they had not disappeared separately at all. They had simply vanished in sequence. 3 weeks after both disappearances, a delayed data request finally reached the Harbor Authority's archived network. It was something Noah had accessed the night before he vanished. Not financial records. Shipping camera feeds. Between 1:12 a.m. and 1:26 a.m., Noah logged into a restricted dock surveillance server and downloaded footage from a single container bay, Bay C-17. The container number in the video matched one of the altered shipment entries. Investigators watched the clip in silence. At 1:19 a.m., the container door opened. Inside were sealed equipment crates. And beneath them, a false floor. When port staff lifted the panel, the empty cavity underneath was large enough to hide several people. But the timestamp on the footage revealed something worse. 2 figures were already inside when the door opened. Alive. One raised a hand toward the camera. The file ended abruptly. Noah had tagged the download with a private note inside the system metadata. A short sentence, hidden where only an internal user would look. "I can prove it. But I need immunity." Detectives now understood why Noah's phone was missing. He had not been running. He had been trying to trade evidence. When Elise wrote, "He disappeared before I could stop him," investigators finally reinterpreted the line. She wasn't reacting to his disappearance. She was reacting to his decision. And somewhere between Noah opening that container and Elise stepping into the elevator 3 days later, someone else had learned what Noah planned to expose. Elise Carter had been wrong about one thing. Noah didn't disappear to protect himself. He disappeared because someone reached him first. Cell tower logs finally revealed what happened on the morning Elise vanished. At 10:02 a.m., 12 minutes before she was seen on the elevator camera, Elise received a call from a number registered to a prepaid phone. The signal briefly pinged off the same harbor tower that had last connected to Noah's missing device. The call lasted 8 seconds. Investigators couldn't hear it, but they could see what followed. Elise's building camera showed her exiting her apartment again at 10:21 a.m., something no one noticed at first. This time, she carried no bag. She walked faster. Her head was down. She never returned. Later that night, Elise's lawyer received another email. This one wasn't written by Elise. It was sent from her encrypted recovery address. Attached was a single image, a still frame taken from the dock footage Noah had downloaded. 2 figures inside the container. One of them was identified within minutes. It was Noah Grant. The other face was partially obscured. But Elise had known who it was. Because beneath the image was a message. Divorce doesn't dissolve liability. That was the last confirmed action connected to Elise Carter. Investigators now believed both disappearances were controlled, not impulsive. Noah had tried to negotiate his way out. Elise had tried to survive it. Neither of them had succeeded. And the case file, which had started as a financial inquiry, was officially reclassified as a joint disappearance involving coercion, unlawful detention, and suspected homicide. With no bodies, no witnesses, and no way to prove which of them was taken first. The harbor footage changed the tone of the investigation. But it didn't change its limits. The container from Bay C-17 had already left the port the same night Noah accessed the server. It was cleared through an overseas transit partner and rerouted twice before disappearing from the public shipping grid. No destination. No manifest. No insurance claim. Officially, the container never existed. Detectives tried to reconstruct how Noah had reached the footage in the first place. His access credentials were valid, but only for internal audits. Someone with higher clearance had opened the server window for him. For exactly 14 minutes. The same 14 minutes he used to download the file. That access was traced to a system administrator who resigned 2 days after Noah vanished and immediately left the country. By the time authorities requested cooperation, the trail was legally cold. What investigators still could not prove was the most important detail. Whether Elise knew about the people in the container before Noah did. Her earlier interviews suggested shock. Her digital history suggested preparation. Both versions could be true. The brief calls between her and Noah during the month after the divorce were replayed again and again in the case summary. 17 warnings. 17 negotiations. 17 chances to choose different sides. But the only clear evidence of intent came from Noah. I can prove it. But I need immunity. He wasn't trying to disappear with Elise. He was trying to disappear from her. Because if the people controlling the shipments believed Elise was still useful, Noah was expendable. And the investigation could never answer one question that quietly haunted the file. When Elise stepped into that elevator with her bag, was she escaping with evidence or reporting back with it? By June 14th, the task force was dissolved. Not because the case was solved, because it could no longer move. International warrants stalled. The encrypted account could not be attributed to a real host. The system administrator's departure was ruled non-criminal under current jurisdiction. The container's shipping trail had legally collapsed into third-party custody, so the case was closed the only way it could be. Administratively, Noah Grant and Elise Carter were both reclassified as missing, presumed dead. Not murdered. Not abducted. Presumed. Their families were informed in separate meetings. 2 different rooms. 2 different explanations. The same careful language. But one unresolved detail remained buried in the final review. During the cleanup of Noah's work computer, a secondary draft file was recovered from an autosave folder. It had never been sent. It wasn't addressed to law enforcement. It was addressed to Elise. Only 3 lines long. They already know I accessed C-17. If you still have the recovery key, erase everything. Don't trust the immunity offer. It's not coming from the police. That message was saved at 6:41 a.m., 37 minutes before Noah walked into his office building for the last time. Which meant Elise knew 2 things before either of them disappeared. Noah was trying to expose the operation, and someone else was already pretending to help him. The investigation closed with one quiet conclusion. They weren't running from the law. They were running from the same people. 1 year after the case was closed, the Harbor Authority received a routine maintenance alert from an old internal backup server scheduled for permanent deletion. No one expected it to contain anything useful. But when the automated scan flagged orphaned metadata fragments, a junior analyst noticed a familiar container reference. C-17. The file itself was gone. The video was gone. Only a synchronization log remained. And inside it, one unexplained outbound connection. The timestamp matched the exact minute Noah had downloaded the footage. The destination was not the encrypted recovery email tied to Elise. It was a private research network used by an independent investigative nonprofit. The same nonprofit that had, months earlier, quietly published a report on illegal offshore cargo transfers, without naming a single port, company, or employee. At the end of that public report was a footnote. A single line. Source material verified through internal maritime surveillance. The task force had never known where that confirmation came from. Now they did. Someone had mirrored Noah's download in real time. Someone with higher access than him. Someone who had chosen not to erase the trail. The discovery forced a final, uncomfortable reassessment. Noah's attempt to trade evidence had failed. But his evidence had still escaped, which meant his disappearance had not protected the operation. It had only protected the people who executed it. Elisa's role remained impossible to define. The system showed no login from her account after the night before she vanished. No uploads. No transfers. No digital trace of cooperation. Only silence. In the end, the only confirmed outcome was this. The truth survived them. They didn't. The nonprofit's report triggered policy reviews, contract terminations, and quiet internal suspensions across multiple shipping partners. But it never triggered arrests. No suspects were named. No charges were filed. And in the official records, Noah Grant and Elise Carter remained exactly where the system had placed them. Unresolved. What the final case file never stated, because it could not be proven, was the private conclusion reached by the lead investigator. The mirrored download meant someone inside the operation had broken rank. Someone who saw Noah's access request and chose to preserve it instead of blocking it. Which explained something else. Why Noah had not been erased immediately after downloading the footage. Why he still had time to walk into his office the next morning. Why he still believed immunity was an option. He had been allowed to hope. Elise, however, was never offered that delay. The call from the harbor tower. The container image sent to her lawyer. The message about liability. Those were not negotiations. They were instructions. The difference mattered. Because it meant Noah's disappearance was reactive. Elisa's was corrective. The case officially ended with 2 missing people and 1 leaked truth. But privately, the file closed with a simpler, colder understanding. The divorce had separated their legal risk. The investigation had separated their value. And when the system finally moved to contain the damage, only one of them was considered useful long enough to be handled gently. The other was only handled. The families stopped expecting updates long before they stopped waiting. Noah's sister still checked the harbor bulletin every month, even after the company dissolved and the building was sold. Elisa's mother kept her phone charged at night, just in case a number she didn't recognize finally meant something different. Nothing ever did. Years later, a sealed interagency memo was quietly declassified under routine transparency rules. It contained no names, no ports, no corporations, only a single operational note. 2 civilian assets were compromised after partial data exposure. Containment successful. External narrative stabilized. There was no explanation of what containment meant. There never is. But the timing of the memo matched their disappearances within hours. The last reference to Noah Grant and Elise Carter appeared in a closed digital archive, not under crime, but under risk management. Side by side. Not as husband and wife. Not even as suspects. As losses. In the public record, the story ends with a container that cannot be traced and 2 people who cannot be found. But inside the system that erased them, the story ends differently. Noah is listed as an uncontrolled breach. Elise is listed as a resolved variable. And the difference between those 2 words explains everything that happened after their divorce. Because in this case, the law did not decide who vanished. The operation did.